So where I would like to start is walking through the results of the first, I call it a trial balloon of the campaign that is done running, and now it's time to dig in, give it a postmortem, see what we learned, and how we can apply it going forward. So I have jumped into the Stout Marketing Business Manager. So this isn't just on the Facebook page, it's here where we have, as you can see, the ad account for the digital marketing technology campaign. Within here, we at this point are working to get a handle on the part of the audience that involves parents. We figure once we get a handle on that, that will provide some really solid traffic. We can keep building on that, and once that is in place and running, then we turn our attention to the actual potential students. So here we have how Facebook breaks this down at the campaign level, and then ad set level, and then ads. Those are all nested one within another in terms of hierarchy. And so here we have the overall, this was the performance of the video view campaign that we ran. We just used $100 of spend, and the reason I'm calling this a trial balloon is we ran this to try and see who really connects with the message. Kevin, if you recall, we asked you to chop down that video, and thank you for putting in the extra work on that. What I wanted to have happen here is we put the video out there. On the post, we didn't give people a lot of options to click to the actual page where they could submit a form, because before we have an audience that does that, I wanted to see who is actually connecting with your message in your video. So with that in mind, when I'm looking at this, I always make sure that I have set this to this date range to make sure that I have covered the actual dates where the campaign ran, or I typically will just set it to lifetime. What you will run into quite often is Facebook decides it wants to default this to just show this month, which let's do that. So if I logged in here and it just said this month, well, we ran some of this last month, it looks like we only spent $4 on this campaign. And so that can look worrisome, but this will fix a lot of data issues when you switch the timing. Any questions so far?
No.
Just real quickly, one of the things that we were talking about before you came in is how did you target this trial balloon of ads? Who did you target?
And that's actually a great segue. Yeah, that's a great segue into the next point. So let's dive right into that. So with this, when you are targeting, when you think about these promotions, and so here's where terminology gets important, is you create your targeting at the ad set level. So the ad set is where you target an audience, and then the ad level is actually the creative, what people see. So right now we're at the overarching campaign level. If we jump into the ad set level, and here where we just have one ad set within a campaign, all this data would be the same. But then you jump into this much more in-depth interface where you are able to make your selections. So for this, I kept my audience fairly broad because, again, I wanted to see not who we necessarily reached out to and grabbed, but who saw this and was interested enough to spend their time watching this. So this is just general budget and schedule up here. You'll notice as we scroll down, this audience definition meter stays with us, and it gives you a potential reach of people based on how you change your targeting. So here, I targeted people who live in these locations. The other options you can do include everyone, people recently there, people traveling. I don't believe this would have actually changed that much. This more comes into play if you have places where there is a ton of commuter traffic or a lot of right now we're in the grips of winter, and so southern states, if we were targeting something there, we would have a lot of people traveling in this location, or everyone in this location would get both residents and tourists. And so what I did with this, in terms of the geography, is we were able to set, yes, Facebook, I know, there we go. We're able to set geographies and then up to a 50-mile radius. And so to start, I went with Menominee and then a 50-mile radius. And then I just threw out a few more of these other potential geographies by dropping these pins. That's why you see these as coordinates rather than cities, is I'm able to just drop a pin on the map. I tried to stay away, not get too far down into the, tried to not get too far into the Milwaukee, Madison, Green Bay markets. I figured that's certainly something we can do, but as we're learning about it, I didn't want to get into those much more competitive ad markets. And you'll also notice that Minnesota is red. Now in the future, well, I should back up. That's not to say that you wouldn't want anyone to come from Minnesota. Obviously, that's not the case. But for the purposes of learning about a core audience near you, I excluded Minnesota from the results, or else even with this little bit of overlap here, you probably would have spent most of the money for this on the Twin Cities Metro. So here, that's our geo. Then for age, I worked backwards from, again, here we've got parents. Who would be a parent who would potentially have a child considering college right now, or about to, maybe a year or two out, and still wanting to say, hey, what are you going to do? And so I went with the age range of 35 to 55. And this is actually one of those things where when we look at the data, we learn some really fun stuff, because we start with, here's what we think, but what does the data actually say? I left it open to both men and women, and then just constrain the language to English. This means that someone would be using Facebook with English as their default language. In the detailed targeting, selected for demographics, parents anywhere from 13, or with children anywhere from the ages of 13 to 26. Ideally, we'd want them closer to that, probably 17 to 20 range. But if someone would have perhaps an older student or older child who's out, maybe that they have a younger child as well, or vice versa. If they have a 13-year-old, they have the potential to have an older child if they are in this age range. And really, that is the starter audience I went with, of saying within this. So this is not to say it was shown to 89,000 people. But in that geography, there were potentially 89,000 people who fit this profile. Of the people this ad was shown to, who did the message connect with? The other thing we do at the ad set level is edit placements. I always use edit placements. I don't like to just turn that over to Facebook. The reason being, Facebook will then funnel everything to Instagram. Instagram certainly has its uses, but it is not as useful for a parent-focused campaign like this, where we aren't constantly adding, here's a picture of a child and that sort of thing. So we edit placements, and the bang for your buck will typically come in this feeds section. So this is saying that this will be on the news feed within Facebook, both on mobile and desktop. You can also select that it would show in instant articles, in-stream videos, suggested videos. Here's Instagram, a bunch of audience networks, so in other apps that partner with Facebook, as well as in Messenger. For this video, Messenger is actually not available, but it's an option in general. What we found at FindLaw, and this is both something that I have found in my in the small agency that I run on the side, is that Facebook feeds are where it's at, unless you have a specific campaign that really drills down or has a particular type of creative. But Facebook feeds is where you're actually going to get in front of people and get them to engage. So we ran it in the feeds, and then you are able to, in optimization and delivery, choose your objective. So here for videos, it's video views. For bidding, you can choose automatic or you can set a bid. When I'm doing a trial campaign like this, I like to leave it at automatic to see what Facebook is going to essentially charge. Is it going to get in front of a relevant audience for a decent price, and I can let it do that? Or have I created an audience that's either too specific or that Facebook just can't match, and I need to set it to manual? The other important thing for this is that you can choose if you are charged based on impression. So when someone sees your video come through their feed, it's not that they watch it, it's just that it has been presented to them, or by 10-second video view. So we changed this to 10-second video view because I really don't care if people just have this scroll in front of them. If this was purely for brand, if we didn't have at least part of this being lead focused, impression would probably be fine. Just get the name in front of as many people as possible. Here, I don't want Facebook to charge me until someone actually watches a good chunk of the video. So we went with this, and especially with a video here that I believe clocks in at 16 seconds, this objective works very well. You can also change the delivery type most of the time. And yes, only with manual bid anymore. I typically leave this as standard so that if you're going to run an ad for 20 days, it will show evenly throughout those 20 days. The flip side here is accelerated, where it will front load what it shows people. So that is everything on the ad set level in terms of targeting, placement, delivery. All right. So for this, we just ran the one ad. I believe we have a preview here. Yeah, so the preview is got some text, had the video. We added this Learn More button just at the end. I was actually running without it for a while on purpose because, again, I was just looking to see who is going to see this message and be interested enough to watch this video to 75%. And that'll make more sense in a bit when we get to the metrics. But I wanted to know who is going to either click play or have this autoplay, hear Kevin tell the story of this degree, and keep watching. So with that creative, we're able to, here we select that it runs, or is built on Stout's account. We are able to, as you see, this is not how the video starts, but we're able to select a thumbnail from it so that even if someone doesn't watch it, they at least see the URL, see the name, see the logo. And then in here, it's pretty standard where you add your headline, your URL, and so on. And so here is where, if you watch the ad over on the right, it's rushing right now. And so here's where a headline would go in. But again, that's something someone can click on. For the purposes of this, we didn't want that. In future versions, that will be there. The link description is what appears below the headline. Typically on desktop, it can, as you see here, appear on mobile. And then you can also select various calls to action. This is also where you can set up some different tracking events if you have the Facebook pixel in place. And Kevin, that will be a separate conversation that I'll have with you. I know we've talked about it a little bit, but I would like to pursue it just a little further. But you can basically say Facebook generates some code for me. It generates code. You put it on the website, and then it both tracks performance of people on the website, and then when you have enough people, it will give you audience data as well. So that's everything with the ad creative. That's fairly straightforward in terms of just creation. All right, and so I am just out of habit clicking here at the ad set level. Again, if here where we had one ad set and one ad, it's all the same data. In the next batch, and we'll talk about that in next steps where there will be multiple ads, we would click down here to see how different ads performed. So as I'm going through this, I'll just tell you essentially what I'm seeing, and here might be where there's some more questions. Feel free to jump in at any time. I start here with, over the course of the run of this ad, here's how many people it reached. The important distinction here between reach and impressions is reach is how many people, impressions is how many times someone had the ad go through their feed. So of these 3,600 people, the ad came through, what are we at? Between 4 and 5 times it came through their feed. Then I will typically scroll past this cost per result for video because, as you see, Facebook likes to default to 3-second video views. I don't put any stock in that because if you think about when you are using Facebook, if you have video on autoplay, there's a strong chance that you have a 3-second video view just by scrolling past something. So to me, this does not have a lot of value there. On this default tab, we have a little bit more. Again, it's just 3-second video views. This percentage watched, because it builds in some of these 3-second views, says the average is 25%. But we get a better picture of this if we go here to our different columns. So here we have, oops, I apologize, my phone is ringing. Let me mute that. You have these different reporting options, and you can even customize the columns so that if this doesn't have everything you need, you can add more. For the purposes of this, where we're going to get a lot of value is video engagement. When we click this, we still have impressions, but now we have 3-second video views, 10-second video views, which is where it charged us. We still have reach, but then we get into some things that I think are really powerful, where we get to this video watches to 75%. And that's where I typically use that as my benchmark. If someone has watched 75% of your video, they are remembering who put the video out there, the general gist of it, and so on. Here, at 75% of the video, they have heard the entire pitch, essentially, and they are all the way to the logo at the end that then stays there for another 4 seconds. So at 75%, they have heard 100% of the pitch. So this is really where I'm focusing my data analysis on. And it will, as you see here, it does drop off as it gets later in the video, but if you think about how you use Facebook or even YouTube or anything online, think about the last time you watched something all the way to the end, or if you clicked away a second or two before to find something else. The cool thing here is of all the people who saw this, 888 stuck around to hear Kevin's message, to hear more about the program, to get all the way to that logo. So this is the audience we'll be focused on. To learn more about them, we're going to this breakdown tab. When we click down here in this by delivery, we open up a bunch more options. We can see this audience by age and gender. Business locations is not applicable here. Country, not so much. Region now won't be as much a thing. The designated marketing area, I believe that is, if I'm remembering correctly, it's an old TV and radio designation that still exists today, but it will break down by, hey, so this person lived in between, somewhere in between Menominee and the Twin Cities, but exactly how far, which market did they fall in. We can also see platform and placement. So platform was it on Facebook or Instagram? In this instance, it's Facebook, so that's not as useful. Placement is really cool, and we actually had some fun learnings that we'll go through here about that. And then we can also look at time of day for a trial balloon like this, I let it run all the time. Typically, the overnight hours will not have as many views or perform as well, but then we know exactly where a cutoff is. Let's jump in right away to age and gender. So this is one that's going to be important because if you remember back to when we were talking about the audience, just tried to reverse engineer what age range would these prospective users be in, these parents. And so we're really focusing on this column here, again, the 275%. If we look at that, we see that in the 35 to 44 age range, so it's these three right here, there's female, male, and unknown, those do not specify gender on Facebook. But if we translate that over here, in that age range, 104 females watched the video to 75%, and 37 males watched it to 75%. If we jump down just a little bit into the 45 to 54 age range, we see a similar trend where 405 of the video views were from women and 251 of the views were from men. This bottom age range, because it was capped in the other screen at 55, even though this age range says 55 to 64, we know that these rows right here are only looking at 55-year-olds due to that cap. And here we see that the total numbers start to drop once we hit age 55. We see the same female-male split, but we see that 55, and then it likely extrapolates 55 plus, we don't have the same ROI. So what this tells me, as I'm looking at this, is that this 45 to 54 is going to be our really core demographic for this particular part of the campaign. We definitely will include others. We don't want to exclude this group, but just based on the sheer numbers, this is the person we want to envision when we're targeting, when we're creating ad creative and so forth.
So that group is our target pool for the parents demographic.
Yes.
Some of those younger ones may be people who are thinking of returning to school. So we could actually target them with a slightly different message for thinking of going back to school and target them with a different video, et cetera, right?
Exactly. And that's where if we wanted to fully shift the messaging like that, we might want to do a separate trial balloon just to confirm that or see where we have some overlap. I would say if we're starting at 35 here, maybe even go one demographic younger. But yes, absolutely. So, yeah, this is just for this parents portion of the campaign. Let me see here. I have some notes as well. So we've talked about that. The engagement. We also had, so if we, again, keep this breakdown, but switch over to this performance and clicks tab, this switches this up a bit where we see who clicked on the ad. Again, that was not the main focus of this, so high versus low is not, if it's low, it's not bad. If it would be surprisingly high, that would be a bonus, is how I look at this. But this also, even in a small sample size, shows similar trends, where if you look at the number of clicks, there were 87 total clicks, and 55 of those came from women in the 45 to 54 demographic. So that's just another data point that I'm using to essentially confirm the hypothesis and build the audience. The other, I'm jumping back here to the video engagement. The other thing that I wanted to look at with this is a different breakdown. So we've been looking at age and gender. But I also wanted to look at time of day, so when it was shown. And this is, this sometimes is slow to load with this much info. So it shows these little dashes. I can tell you that this basically performed best between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. So we would use that going forward rather than waiting on this to load when Facebook is slow. The other fun thing is if we look at, there we are. Oops. So we have now switched over. We're seeing, we're looking at video engagement. So again, those watches to 75%, that people who resonate with the core message. And our breakdown is what device were they on. This was a bit surprising, actually, because this is both at FindLaw and at what I do outside of work. I typically see a good 80% or higher on mobile, and so the device will be iPhone, iPad, Android, and so forth. Desktop makes up a shrinking sector of just devices in general, and then especially for Facebook ads, because so many people access it on their phone. But here, of the people who actually watched the video to where we wanted them to, 363 of them were on desktop. Then if you look down to these next two, that's about a little over 300. They were on iOS devices, and the remaining 200 were either on Android or other. And so we end up with, of the 888, this breaks down to, forgive my rough math, but I want to say about 40% were on desktop. So a significant jump. And that's something that we'll want to keep in mind when creating the next batch of ads, because when we are creating an ad, most of the time, we're thinking about this version, the mobile version. But if we think about this a bit more, it just helps us make sure that we're framing a messaging not just that's effective, but that uses this space appropriately, so that we don't try and cram too much or too little. And then especially because we know desktop is more important than it typically is, that we will have both a headline and the supporting text that shows up under here. While that supporting text often doesn't show up on mobile and a lot of times is a throwaway, here we know it's going to be shown to more people, so we want to make sure that we're very thoughtful with it. Okay, and then I'm just jumping back here to this data. So those are really the big takeaways that I have thus far. This was essentially confirming a core persona so that we can make sure that we're optimizing our ROI for this. And then my next steps will be to now target that audience a bit more in depth, and then create more ads that are have more clickable places, the headlines and so forth, and that also have varied creative, so that we can throw, instead of one video, we can throw 5 out there and see which one people actually interact with more. I'll also be creating some ads to the same audience that have some text and then a static image and a link to the landing page. And I'll create multiple ones of those so that we can see which ad essentially wins, which one performs the best, and then we can put more spend behind that and turn the others off. So that's I guess that's a general overview of what I've seen, where I'm at in next steps. So